Hey, Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, buddy. Hey, so listen, for people who don't know, maybe you could take just a couple minutes here and quickly tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. Basically grew up in Arizona, was born in Colorado, moved here, and was lucky enough to get a scholarship, went to San Diego State, and played football there for 4 seasons, was redshirted, so was there 5 years. Then was lucky enough to get drafted in the NFL. Didn't have quite the professional career that I wanted. Got injured my rookie year. But I was still proud. I battled just to stay kind of into the league for a couple more seasons after that rookie year. And played 1 year in NFL Europe, and then actually signed a deal with Atlanta, but was truthfully injured. I was kind of lying every time I take a physical. I had a whole system down so they wouldn't spot the swelling and the problems I still had. So I needed another surgery, got that done. And then honestly, I was out an entire year and I was just done, but in that time I kind of started a professional career outside of football. So I just didn't have the heart anymore. But that was a real transition. I think every athlete goes through it, where you are no longer kind of a football player, and it's more than just not playing. It's a lot of who you are is wrapped up in that. And so I kind of always joke that I had a midlife crisis at like 25 years old, 26 years old, because it's like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I think a lot of that's what we're going to talk about here today. So excited.
Yeah, no, man, absolutely. And I just saw you post some stuff. Congratulations. I know you were just inducted into your high school's Hall of Fame. I also know you were inducted into the San Diego State College University Hall of Fame. So obviously you had an amazing career, both high school and college. What was it like to get that call, or either of those calls?
Both were super exciting. I mean, I'll start with the high school one. You put so much into it, and really high school, I think, is where you form, a lot of friendships that last, and you kind of, it's a special group to ever play football. So you got these great teammates, you got these friends. So that was really cool. And we had a lot of success in my high school. And so to be recognized was really cool. And that one just happened. The San Diego State one was obviously, that's a huge honor because, there's a lot of great athletes that come through San Diego State. And, I think I said this in the speech. You and I played together, offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I was fortunate because I was maybe the most recognized off of the line, but it doesn't matter. The line is the line. If the other four guys weren't good and we were damn good, it wouldn't have mattered. So, but it was really cool to get that, obviously that honor, and, be able to, you can always kind of hang your hat on it and say, I left it all out there on the field and was recognized. Not the reason why you do it, but, it does feel really good when you get that recognition.
No, absolutely. It's interesting. I was in a situation. I was early in my career. I was an early executive. I was working for a startup, and we were out raising capital. And I would, you kind of always start off the introduction meeting, your meeting with the VC or whoever's across the desk from you, and they would ask about your background. And, I would be very similar to the way you gave your background. I was lucky enough to do this. And yeah, I was lucky enough to do this. I did this. And the CEO of the company at the time, pulled me aside, and he's like, hey man, these people are, they're betting on horses. Like get rid of the humility. Tell people who you are and what you've done. And
yeah.
And I try to explain to them, right. And I think your humility is coming through. It's like when you're an athlete, and you get interviewed, right? I mean, you're a quarterback and you throw for 5 touchdowns and 450 yards or whatever it is. And what do you say? Oh, hey, my offensive line did an amazing job and they gave me time to protect, and my receivers just did great. And the coach, right? We're trained to put that off on other people. Is that something that you've had to deal with in your professional life where, you kind of have to tell people a little bit more about who you are and what you've accomplished in your life?
Yeah, it's funny once you get into it, and once people know, because it's a fascinating thing, and I think that when you've done it, like you and I, we're used to it. We know a lot of people, obviously, because you played college sports, and then guys that go to the NFL. So your circle of people has those experiences, and you've had them. But to the outside world, it's so unique. I mean, most people, it's hard to make your high school team. It's hard to do these things. So they get really into it and they want to know. And sometimes I think I'm the same way. I try to kind of deflect off of it because I also want to be known as a professional. I don't want them to be kind of relying on something that I did in the past. But I think for most people, it's a really cool thing. And I kind of go back to thinking about when I was a kid. If I met somebody that played college sports, or especially professional sports of any type, I mean, it just blew your mind because, when you look at the numbers, and I'm kind of a numbers guy, you look at the percentages of what it takes to make it, it's kind of amazing when you do. So people want to know more about it and kind of want to understand it because obviously, especially football is kind of America's passion. So
absolutely. So you obviously had a great high school career. I know you were pretty highly touted, definitely in the state of Arizona. From knowing you, I believe ASU was sort of your dream school. That's really where you wanted to go, and it did end up happening, right? Something occurred, and
yeah, actually, it was University of Colorado was where I wanted to go. That was my dream.
Okay,
school. Yeah. In ASU, I had actually committed to, and they had offered me. What had happened with Colorado is Rick Neuheisel got the job, and he had been the guy that was recruiting me out of Arizona, and he didn't offer me a scholarship, which was kind of disappointing because he'd kind of been recruiting me. Took a trip to ASU and really liked it, and actually, kind of softly committed to it. Then really I decided a bunch of their coaches left. Actually, Carl Durrell went up. He was the one that was the main guy recruiting me there. He left and went to the University of Colorado. The defensive line coach, guys going recruited for both offensive defensive line, went to USC. There's a whole bunch of things. So then I was like, you know what, I got to take this trip. And you and I both, know Ed White. And so Ed White was the coach of San Diego State, 17 years NFL, and is like a guru. I mean, he's more than a coach. He's a teacher in life. He's just a great man. And so I'm really glad I took that trip because I think about that all the time. If I would have stuck with ASU, I would have been, gone to school close to my home. Would I have gotten out and met new people, done new things? I don't know. It'd been very easy to stay kind of in the, in your circle and I would add a lot of friends, more people I knew that obviously went to ASU being, right there in Phoenix or in Tempe. So anyway, I'm glad everything worked out the way it did. Obviously, we'll always kind of be disappointed. My family was all University of Colorado people, and so, it would have been great. But I'm really glad. I don't think I'd be the player if I didn't go to San Diego State and learn from Coach White. I don't think I would have ever had the skills because I saw guys in the NFL from big schools, and they did not get coached the way we did. And that followed on with Coach Baldwin. That really taught us things the guys just didn't know. And that gives you a huge advantage.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Having played for Coach White, I know how much he's meant to me in my life and still a part of my life. So that transition from high school to college is a big one. It's really where I think a lot of people become men. You seem to do better than a lot of people did in your ability to quickly come in and figure out the system and find your place. How did you do that? Was Coach White a big part of that, or was that just kind of an inner fire that you had in yourself?
I think it's both. I've always was very driven, especially with football. It was a big family thing. My dad played at a small school. My grandfather played. It was something that was always there. And I wanted to be good. I really did. I wanted to be, I set my goals extremely high and tried to work towards those every day. So, it was unique. And I think, part of my thing is I maybe have a maturity. My dad passed away when I was young, and that's obviously I would give up everything to have those memories and have that life with my dad in it. But it also teaches you how to grow up, and you kind of are forced to maybe take things on and mature faster than others because that's just your lot in life. So, in reality, it'd be disingenuous to say those things didn't help me in some ways, and even my freshman year in college, my grandfather, who had become a lot like my father figure growing up, got cancer our freshman year before we started. And I went back home and was with him, and, he passed away. Actually, it was before our first game that year against Cal. So I had to go back to the funeral that week and then come back. And I didn't play in the game, but I suited up for it. And that was a big deal as a freshman to kind of suit up and be on the travel team. So anyway, I think that those things help you. So I definitely had to enter fire. I had a certain level of maturity. And then I'll be honest, football always made sense to me. I love the strategy behind it. I always kind of think about it's like high-speed chess. What the repercussions are, they don't take your piece. They might, blast your good buddy who's your quarterback or your running back if you mess up. And so that, things are moving around quickly, and you have to have that mental part of it. And then that lets you play fast as an athlete. But if you don't know what you're doing, it doesn't matter at all. You could be the greatest, athlete in the world, but if you're on the football field and you don't know your assignment, you're worthless. So,
absolutely. And you obviously had an amazing career at San Diego State, All-American your senior year. Pretty exciting.
Yep.
Drafted into the NFL by the Vikings, I believe.
Yep.
How was that transition? What was that like going from college to the pros?
It was such a kind of surreal experience because you get there. I remember just even like the first, mini camp, because that happens real quick after the draft. I think I got drafted. They flew me out there. I was actually in Las Vegas during the draft because I didn't really want to watch it. I wasn't going to be a first rounder, so I wasn't going to go to New York City. So I don't want to sit around and wait for, 2 days for my name to be called. But they flew me out there the next day, and then I think I was back in San Diego for like 2 or 3 days, and then instantly had to fly out there for that weekend to minicamp, which was, an experience. I mean, we had John Randall, was, I think, my first one-on-one pass pro, and the guy's, first ballot Hall of Famer. So, but I'll tell you, is one of the things I was lucky is playing at San Diego State, we had some guys like Leroy Glover. I remember he was one of my first, going head-to-head against when I got to college. And that guy played in, 8 Pro Bowls or something like that. So, I was used to kind of being outmatched, or at least definitely out-experienced by really good players. But it was a blast. You kind of get in there and you just kind of – I had more of an attitude of I'm just going to let it loose. Like if it doesn't happen, I'll be fine, but I'll just kind of go at it. Where maybe in college I – played a little bit more tight because I kind of knew I could block the guy, so I didn't want to make a mistake. But here it's like, man, I'm just going to try to, I'm going to try as hard as I can to actually do this, because if I don't, these guys are too good. They'll eat you alive.
So you talked a little bit about, your career, the injury, and being done at 25, right? And it's 25 years old. I mean, you're a kid, you're just starting off, and it's like, well, your first career's done. Something that you've spent your entire life doing. It's kind of probably been the thing that it's been your dream since you were a little boy, and really has dominated every moment, everything you've really done in your life up to that point. So you talk a little bit about the midlife crisis, jokingly, but how, did you have a plan? What did you want to do next?
I didn't. I sort of had a plan. I would say the best thing I did was I always gave myself options. I didn't do. I kind of regret I didn't try harder in college, really, in classes. I mean, that's probably one of my biggest regrets. But I still did well enough, and basically, I think I had one class left for my degree, and I got that done, right away when I was done playing. And I had done some internships through the NFL. I'd always thought about coaching, so I'd done a coaching internship. Actually coached NFL Europe a few years later, which was another part of an NFL program. But I'd also done business ones. I'd gotten my insurance and financial services license while I was playing. They had a program with I forget it was even with. I don't think the company's around anymore, but it was a big, investment firm. So I did that, and so I was kind of set up, to at least have myself options. And so, that was the first thing I did was insurance and financial services. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I had been involved in kind of investing in real estate with money I had made in Arizona, and at that time it was a really good thing. We were investing in raw land that we would entitle for development, housing, and things like that. And so in the early 2000s, from 2000 to 2005, that was a great business to be in. Now from 2008 to 2010, horrible business to be in, but you learn some lessons. But that was one thing. I had some options. I'd given myself, even if you don't know what you want to do, the reason to go get a degree, the reason to give it is just so you can have, more chance of success later in life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I put myself back into that, 22, 23-year-old mindset and, not going on in the NFL and having friends that, did like yourself. And, you see, the money they make and you're like, oh my God, those people are never going to have to work again. And they're set for life. And then now 40 something year old me goes, no, you get a little bit of a head start. It's helpful. Like you can do things with it, but 25 years old, unless you sign for, you're a top 5 draft pick or have a huge contract, you're going to go through that money. You better figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Right.
Yeah. It's that's the one thing. If you even have a great career, besides Tom Brady, you're going to probably be done at, early 30s at the best. And then you've got a lot to go. And there's something about making money too is, I always think back to in college, if I had $20 on a Friday night, I was going to have an absolute blast, you had everything you needed. Now I go through $20 feels like before I leave my house, you know, it's so money, you get into it, you get used to having it. And I think it's a good motivator. It makes you kind of want more. It's like a lot like anything else, because that's how you measure success in some ways in business and things like that is what you make. And, I think that's part of being an athlete is you always kind of are able to set goals. I mean, you have to be successful in athletics, you have to be able to set goals and then work towards them. And you want that reward, and if you're playing football, you want to win that game, you want to do those things. But in the professional thing, it's like, hey, look, I want that promotion. I want to make more money. I want to be more successful because, that's all part of that, that mindset of pushing yourself towards a goal.
So you mentioned that, to being successful in athletics, you got to be able to set goals. There's so many things that I still to this day, and you'll appreciate because you probably, heard the same thing, but I'll hear myself saying, for instance, Lombardi time. I still have this philosophy in life that, with my team of people and companies that I've run and managed, if you're on time, you're late. Right. You just show up to meetings 5 minutes early. It's just the way it works. Are there things like that were sort of drilled into your mind playing sports that you just still take with you today in the professional world?
Yeah, I think you nailed the biggest one is Lombardi time. I think that's something that's a saying I've always loved. You're 5 minutes early is on time you're late. And if you're late, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, but there's so many things like that. I always go back to, 2-a-days and the amount, and it's one thing, the physical strain, but also the mental strain. That's the one thing I think people don't realize that didn't play college football or beyond is the meeting time. It's one thing you are out there practicing, but you're sitting in those meetings and you're learning. And so I go back to that all the time where I'll have a long day, where let's say I'm, doing something, I'm meeting with our board and it's a long day and you're going through stuff. But in my mind, it's never as hard as a 2-a-day was. Mm-hmm. It's never going to be that physically and mentally taxing on you. And so, yeah, there's always those things. And I go back to, there was Rayfield Wright was a guy who's in the Hall of Fame. He came and gave a talk. I don't even know how I got invited to this thing. I was in middle school and they kind of had the teachers kind of nominated kids to go listen to him talk. It was kind of I guess they said the leaders of the thing. And he's the one, he had this speech about how to set goals and then work towards them. So it's you set your goal far off, the ultimate thing, in let's just say in football, when you're in high school, it's a state championship. Well, that's your end goal. Now, what is it that you have to do? Well, you have to make the playoffs before you can win the state championship. Mm-hmm. And then you have to do this. And then you build it all the way back down to then you as an individual, as part of that team, and what you're going to do that day. So those things always help. And I'm a big person. I write everything down. I write down my calendar. I'm an old school guy. Right in front of me right here, I've got my calendar. It's got my stuff written down. It's got my kind of things to get done today. But I used to do that with goals with sports. And so I kind of carry that over of when you put it down on paper and you look at it, you say, okay, I got to get that done. And it's funny when I don't put it down, I can procrastinate it, put it off, justify, well, I'll just go home now instead of getting that done. But when it's down on paper, it's like, man, I got to, I got to get this, let's get this off the table and move on. And that's a lesson, I think, from, a great NFL Hall of Famer given a kid. And it's one thing I remember about that speech. And it's something that's helped me my entire life.
Yeah, I think that concept of working backwards is so powerful, right? I mean, it's one thing to write a goal down, and we all know the how impactful and how important writing goals down can be. But then once you start to work backwards, it really helps you realize what's going to be necessary for you to achieve that goal. And I think there's the old saying, and I paraphrase it, but kind of like a goal without action steps is sort of just a dream, right? And you need to make it something that's actionable, and it only becomes actionable if you have actionable objectives and things that you can actually accomplish, right? You made one comment, and I also think it's somewhat interesting. It's something that I talk about a lot, kind of in my own professional world. Is you mentioned the meetings, and there are tons and tons and tons of meetings, and I'm sure that it continues to go on through the NFL for forever. And really, what those meetings is reviewing film, and in most cases, you're reviewing film of either the opponent or yourself, but you definitely yourself. All practices are videotaped. Basically every rep that you perform, whether in a practice, a game, or a drill is on tape, and you go through it, and, a coach is going to nitpick you. Did you take the right step there? Did you step here? Whatever it may be, but it teaches you to be coachable, right? Where, as ex-athletes, you're used to having people tell you when you do things wrong, and you just accept it. I was making, a comment now, Tom Brady now has kind of gone into like God world, but there was a time where I'm sure, after maybe 3 Super Bowls, he would sit in a room, and whether it was, McDaniels or whether it was Belichick, he was getting coached. There were times where he made the wrong read, and they were still getting in him, telling him he had to do better. And I find that a lot of people today are afraid to coach their employees or their people. They're trying to be sensitive. They don't want to hurt people's feelings. And, and I think it's a disservice both to the employee as well as to the company. Have you had any experiences like that?
Yeah, that was a really great point you made. And it kind of leads back to your last question of what do you take with you? And I see it all the time. I see where people can't be critical of themselves. It's almost like they get stuck, and it's like to admit you were wrong or to admit that you could have done that better. It's like they don't want to do it. And I think that that's a crazy way to look at things, where really what you're saying is, I want to get better. How do I do it? And we did spend so much of that time, and it was so critical. And not only was it teaches you, because we were in front, like let's just say is the offensive line room. You're in there with all your best buddies, and you're getting called to task for something that you did. And then the kind of the big test would be, let's say on Saturday night, and you got the primetime ESPN game like we used to have. And now you're out there, and essentially, everybody who's probably close to you in the world, meaning your good friends, family, they're all watching that game. And you're putting yourself out there to be basically judged. Like you're either going to have a great game and everyone's going to slap you on the back and congratulate you, or you can have a bad game and you can, give up a sack at an opportune time, do something that you have a mental error, whatever it is, and you look bad, but you do it in front of everybody, and it's a really hard thing. And I think that lesson of how to take that, deal with it, kind of internalize it, because it's not easy. It never should be easy. You don't want to be called out. You don't want to be, but I think what you're saying is like, that's what drives you to do better. And it is a disservice not to challenge people. I think that's, missing in our society in so many ways. It starts from the top, politics on down. It's like people get stuck, and it's like, well, if you can't, if new information can't get you to change your mind or look at things, then that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Everything should be changed. You should always be looking at whatever belief you have, whatever core value you have, and questioning and saying, is this right? And then as new information comes out, you better take it in, process it, and say, is it still right? And football teaches you that. It teaches you kind of in harsh lessons. It's like, hey, you better work on yourself because these other guys are, and you may be better now, but they're going to catch up, and you're going to get your ass kicked pretty soon.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So, from your perspective, I mean, you have parents out there who, are want the best for their kids. You have, people coming out of college or in college or, starting their career off. And, what would be, that piece of advice that you'd give them of, hey, here's the things that you're going to need to be able to do to be successful in your life and in your career?
Yeah, I think, part of it is to humble yourself, know that you don't know everything when you're starting out. Look for people who do. And I'll say that's like a Coach White, look for somebody that's done it at the highest level and then learn from them. And that's something that I think I wish there was more of. I wish there was kind of a better opportunity set for people to mentor, to do those kind of things. I think it's great. I know some companies do it, but I don't think enough do, where you kind of put some, a junior person and somebody starting out and put them with a kind of a senior person, somebody that's there. But, for whatever reason, they don't do it. And I think it's a mistake because it's the best to learn from those who have done it. And then, but it's also hard to say, you don't know everything. So sometimes you just gotta, shut up and listen and take, like you said, take the coaching, which are take the instruction, which people don't want to do. And I think it's because they haven't had the way that we were talked to. I don't think that they do that anymore. And even in college sports at that level, how coaches would get on you. But I think it was a great lesson because it just, it reinforces they aren't doing it to be mean or to be an asshole to you. They're doing it to make you better and help you achieve your goals, which is all part of it. And I think that's, in business, that's the same thing. Is look, we all win if the company does well, or we get, whatever it may be, you get the sale done, you get whatever your goal is, you all succeed. And there's just too much, people, like you said, people are not coachable. And that's a lesson that I think you can only get from being in sports and things. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. I've had situations in my own career where, I do tend to default to the sports and, a little bit of the philosophies that, we came up with, hey, meritocracy and like no excuses and accountability and those types of things. And, the fact of the matter is not everybody responds to that. And it is what it is. So I've had to adjust and I've had to morph, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just, not everybody's wired the same way. How have you had to adjust kind of that philosophy that we grew up with, but understanding that in the real world, that's not how everybody is. Yeah.
And I think, that's very true. I'll tell you. So I did coach, I coached in NFL Europe, and, in one of the best lessons in coaching, even in sports, is that not everyone responds the same way, And in one of my favorite sayings is that this is what Dennis Green said one time when I first got to the Vikings: is I'm going to treat everybody fairly, but I'm not going to treat everyone equally. And so you treat people fairly, but you got to figure out what pushes certain people. And if you're going to be in a leadership position, that's what you have to do. But I've definitely had it where, I'm so used to wanting things done right. And you have to, it's good, but this is about being coachable. Like my business partner, the CEO of my company, he says, hey, you're right, but don't be so, forceful in that. And it's like, okay, you know what? And you got to I have to take a step back and say, you know what? Yeah, I was right, but I'm wrong in the way I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. And so you just, you do have to learn. That's a valuable lesson to learn. But again, it becomes about, are you willing to step back and look at yourself and be judgmental of yourself and say, is this actually going to help me accomplish the goal that I want? And And a lot of times you just got to know the people and you got to be able to read. And that's one thing I think, in listening to people and seeing how they respond. So, you can say the same thing to 3 different people and get 3 totally different results and reactions to it. And so you gotta be able to sit back and kind of judge what's, their reaction, or listen to what they say, from what you say to them. So.
And you still, you've done some other coaching after NFL Europe, correct?
Yeah, I did. I coached high school ball. I haven't done it for the past few years, just time wise and things. It's such a commitment of time, but it's a blast. I see the kids that I coached a few years ago. Now they're graduating from college. They're getting jobs, so I see them kind of now in a totally different light. I might see them in kind of a social setting at a bar or something like that. And, it's great to see, because there's kids I know. There's the kid was struggling through high school. He's one of my favorite kids. And I always joked that him and I would have been, he'd have been my good buddy if I was in high school with him at the same time. And we would have gotten a lot of trouble together. I kind of had the same mindset on a lot of different things. He was struggling with school, got him through. He ended up going to the University of Arizona. I went to JC first, U of A. He's graduated. He's got a good job now. I saw him ran into him up skiing in Flagstaff this last winter. And that's a really cool thing to see somebody that you, helped out. It's basically a volunteer job. You figure out what you get paid for coaching high school football. It's like $1 an hour. So you're really doing it to just kind of help these kids out. And when you see kids like that you probably think, if they didn't have football, now he was never going to be, a college NFL player, those kind of things, but it helped him get through high school, and then that allowed him to get a degree and now have a path in life that's probably way better than what he would have had otherwise.
Coaching is so important to these kids. In many cases, these coaches are going to be some of the most influential people in their lives. And, I think coaches, deserve more credit, because it truly is a labor of love. You don't get paid well.
Yep.
Who's been the most influential coach in your life, and why?
Well, Coach White, for a lot of reasons, in him kind of, the life lessons more. As much as he was a great teacher of football, but he, as his daughter, who was our age, was paralyzed and in a coma for our first few years in college, and he was dealing with that. And you just see, he's a man who knows he's dealt with some things. He's had a lot of success in his life, but he's also had to deal with things, but it doesn't change who he is. He's still the same, caring person and those kind of things. So you learn from that. But really all my coaches, I can think back to even, Pop Warner coaches and guys that I just looked up to. I remember one of my offensive line coaches in high school, Tony Conrad. He coaches now out in California, but he played in NAU, which again, back to it was a huge deal to me to have a guy that had played at that high, college level, back then Division I AA. And it was just cool to have guys like that be a part of it. And they just kind of make an influence on you where you say, man, I want, it's like a freshman. It's like, you see him, he's just out of college, he's probably 6'4", 300 pounds. You're like, man, I want to work to be like that. I want to achieve those kind of things. And so there's just, and like you said, the guys who do it, just out of the love. I'm watching my nephew now play, and you got the guys out there that are just sacrificing here in Arizona. It's 105 degrees on a Saturday, and they're out there coaching these kids up and doing it for no reason, other than to see the kids succeed, really. I think that's for the most part. There's obviously some that go about it the wrong way, but I really don't think they may have some bad tendencies, but it's not, their heart's in the right spot, because there's no one would do that just to do it. And so, yeah, I think we need more support for them, and you need, the parents to support them more and to really help that out, because it's such a great thing.
It really is. And, you mentioned Coach White and his daughter. They say that you can't truly understand your parents until you get older. And, now as a father of 2 daughters, When we were 18, 19 years old, and, obviously his daughter had the freak tragic accident that ultimately led to her passing away. I think you see it from the perspective of another 18 and 19-year-old. But now, as someone in my 40s who has daughters, and just to understand how crushing that was, and, really how Coach White was able to handle that and keep a positive outlook on life and still be there with all of us. And, still here 20 something years later, we're talking about him being, one of the most influential people in our lives. So Shout out to Coach White.
Yeah.
How about teammates? I know you've had a lot of great teammates. I know you have a lot of really close friends that were teammates, but who was the teammate that pushed you, that really made you better?
That's a great question. What I'd actually say is Andrew Klein. We came in together, and we just, it was like we were kind of competing always for the same, thing, especially when we were young. It's like, okay, basically we had 4 returning starters after our redshirt freshman year. And so it was like a competition, and we were good buddies, but you want to be the guy that gets that spot, and so we help push each other for sure. And then, and I'll say, like Turley, that guy was just a maniac, and getting to play next to him for a couple of years was, you just kind of got to see like the intensity that you can bring to the game, especially at offensive line, which can sometimes you need to be a little bit passive sometimes to, and things, but he didn't play that way ever. It was kind of like just attack, which was great, so you kind of learn those things. But then the guys you got to go against, like I said, like Leroy Glover, like what a great opportunity as a freshman to come in and basically get taken to school by a guy that was a really good player and that was going to go on to have a really long NFL career. Those things are, that's a great lesson, because you learn, okay, I got a little bit of work to do before I can be at that level. So
Kyle Turley, man, that dude is you talk about intense and everything a person does in life, man. It's that guy. Yep. So if you could go back and give that 18-year-old, Mike Malano, one piece of advice, what would it be?
It's funny. I would tell myself to go to class more. I would say, really take the opportunity. And I remember actually you and I a few years ago were out to dinner. It's probably like 8 years ago now or whatever it was. And you said, what, if you had, $20 million in the bank, all you'd want to do is basically kind of work out and learn stuff every day. And that's really what our job was when we were 18 years old. It was like, look, make yourself mentally stronger, but you're getting a free education, go to class, work out, and take advantage of those things. I took enough advantage but I still regret. I could have done more, and that's, I don't really feel that way about the football side of things. I feel that way about the school. And I don't think I would be, not even necessarily would have helped me in my career necessarily if I would have done more. But it would have helped my, just my own kind of inner self to know that I gave more of an effort in class, and it's hard, you go back to what you say to an 18-year-old. It's like, these times are great. You're never going to have it this easy. But you don't listen when you're 18. You kind of nod your head and say, oh yeah, great, whatever. And, I'm going to sleep in instead of getting up and going to class. And I regret doing that. Now, I didn't ever do that with football, but I did that with school, and I regret that.
Yeah, as they say, man, youth is wasted on the young.
Exactly.
All right, brother. Hey, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
I'd say accountability. I always wanted to be the guy that if you were lined up next to me, you knew I was going to do my job on the football field. And that's how I want to be in business and in life. I want my wife to know that she can always count on me. I want my friends to know they can always count on me, my family. And so that's accountable is what I want to be known as a guy that, look, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm a big one of like, if I say, hey, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. I'm not going to BS you and say, yeah, let's get together and do this. Like, okay, yeah, we're making plans. I'm going to figure out how to make it work. And, sometimes things will always come up, but it's like, look, when I commit to something, I want it to work, and I want everyone around me to know that if it's within my power, you're gonna get the best from me every single time out.
I love it, man. Well, look, brother, I appreciate you coming on the show. You're one of those guys that I think was extremely influential in my life. Very similar. You get to college, you come out of this, bubble that's kind of high school, and it teaches you real quick how to be a man. And you learn to be a man because there's people around you that are working their ass off, that are talented, that are smart, and they're going to take what's yours. And the only way you're going to make it or you're going to survive is you better learn how to compete or go home. And, the reality of it is a lot of people ended up going home, and the system continues to move forward. And, I think those are the type of things that, have helped, me in my professional career. And it was definitely guys like you that when I got to school and kind of met and, saw just talented, dedicated, hardworking dudes where it's like, look, if I don't get my act together, I'm going to be one of those guys sitting on my couch saying, what could have been. So I appreciate it, man. I appreciate our friendship. Appreciate you coming on and telling your story.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. Anytime.
All right.